Saxon Advanced Math 61.C. This is box and whisker plots. And they're actually going to cover stem and leaf here first, but they don't say that in the book. But I put it up there because you're going to want to know what it is, first of all. So the very first thing they did is they gave you a list of 32 numbers. Now, the human brain struggles looking at a large list like this because we have a hard time quantifying what that even is. It's just numbers to us. We don't think that way. So we have to have a better way of displaying this data to better digest what that means. And of course, in the previous lesson for today, you could use standard deviation to come up with some unique information about that. But for right now, we're looking at it and saying, well, that's great, but how does this work? Well, how is this distributed out? And some of you remember stem and leaf plots from years past, but we'll go over a quick show of this. And I'm going to show you a little different than what the book does in a moment. It's drawing from a different Saxon edition, and I think you'll understand why that's so important momentarily. First thing they did is they said, let's go ahead and list all of the tens values in here. So 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. And we're going to call those the stems. And then we start looking through and we say, oh, 90 becomes 90. And the leaf is just the second digit. So 78 is represented with a 7. And excuse me there, I don't know where that came from. 7, 8. And if I did this, and there's the quickest way to do this is to put them all in numerical order first. And I didn't write it up there twice. I wrote it up there the way they did. But if you put it in numerical order, they just fall into place, right? 90, 92, 92, 94, 95, 96, 96, 96. And they go on through, okay? Now, this is how they did it. And this is how they found the range, which is the largest number, 96, and the smallest number, 55. That's your range. The problem I have with this is we think reading left to right. So we read this and we say, this is the smallest number, this is the largest, and then I jump to the next line, I'm back to the smallest, but I'm going down. I should be going from the other way around, saying if I'm going from largest to smallest, 6 to 0 and then back. So I wrote it this way. You don't have to write it this way if you don't want to. I prefer the stem and leaf plots written like this. It's the same data, just going 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this makes sense in my head. If it doesn't for you, use this method, that's fine. I went ahead and numbered. That's what the small numbers are. The smallest number is 55, and then we have a 60 is the second smallest, 60 is the third smallest. And notice I put small numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you'll see why that is in just a minute. I have 32 total numbers. I need to find the median to get to my box and whisker plot, which I have down here already, but let's get to how we got there. So I need the number in the middle. Well, if there's 32 numbers, exactly in the middle will be between the 16th and 17th number. Now, some people struggle with that, but you realize if you have two things and I say, what's halfway in between them? Well, it's not either one. If you have four things and I say, well, what's halfway? What's the middle number in the middle? Well, none. There's not a number in the middle. It's halfway in between the middle numbers. And so we're going to do that with this. We're going to say, well, it's between 16 and 17. So I'm going to count the 16th number, which is 80, and the 17th number, 83, and I'm going to average those numbers. So I average the two middle numbers. Now, if this was an odd set of numbers, I wouldn't have to average it because an odd set of numbers would have a number right in the middle, right? If you have three friends, one stands in the middle, yep, there it is, okay? And that works the same thing with the odd number set. This happens to be 32 numbers, so there isn't a number in the middle. I'm going to end up averaging the two middle numbers. That gives me 81.5. Now, that's great, but I need to find out what the first quarter of that number is. So if I look at it, it's between the 15th and the 16th number. So I'm going to put a line here, and I'm going to say that's half the data, and that's half the data. Well, yeah, that makes sense, right? I got half of it on this side and half of it on this side. So if I wanted to find the number in the middle of the first half, that would be the quartile 1, which we'll talk about quartiles in a minute, but that would be the Q1 that I'm looking for. That's going to be between the 8th and the 9th number, right? Because 16 divided by 2, 8, is between the 8th and the 19th number. So it's between the 8th and 9th. So between 69 and 71. So I average those two and I get 70. That's my quartile 1. Then I go to the second half of the number set. And now you can see why I'm writing it in order because it gets really confusing on where that goes if I try to count it that way. And so if I look at it and I say, well, it's between the 24th and 25th number, between 88 and 90. Well, that's 89. And now I have my minimum number, 55, my maximum number, 96, and I put those on a graph, on a number line, if I wanted to number this all the way out. And then I put my median number in there, and I put a dot on a line right there. Then I put my quartile 1, which is at 70, and I put another line. I put my quartile 3, which is 89, put it right here. And now I've got the edges of my box, right? These are my quartiles. So the data is being distributed in, this is half of the data, right? And this is half of the data, and that's half the data. And I can see how it's distributed across the number line where it's being skewed more to the right, right? Because we're studying the central tendencies. And I'm looking at it saying, well, more of the data is over here scrunched together, and I got a 55 that's kind of out there. But most people score in this range up here, and I can see that looking at a box and whisker plot. Now, let's make your life a lot easier. This is cumbersome. Rewriting big lists of numbers and making sure that you get them all, and then if you make a mistake on the order, everything's all messed up. So we have a calculator, we have a tool, and we're going to go ahead and use that. So I'm going to get my calculator on here, and it's just the flashing screen like you normally would see. And if I come down here to the stat button, okay, and the calculator is great. The book doesn't go into it in very much detail, so you want to pay attention to this here. I'm going to hit that stat button, and it's going to bring up edit, calc, and test. Now I'm going to hit the enter on number 1 here, and the reason why is I want to edit my list. Now, I'm not going to take the time to type all this in. I did that before the video for you, so you didn't have to watch me type in a list of 32 numbers. But all I did is hit under L1 is hit 90, enter, 78, enter, 96, enter, and so on until I have all of them listed out here. Now I have them all under list 1. So I'm going to go back to my stat, and I'm going to jump over to calc. Okay, so, and that's short for calculations, what you want to do with these. And we're doing one variable stats. Why? We only have X values. We have no Y values. We have no second variable. So I'm going to stay in one variable stats. So I'm going to hit enter on that. Okay. Once I do so, it brings up and it says one variable stats and has a flashing cursor. That's okay. Everything is fine. It's asking for you to execute the program or enter the program. And I hit enter. Now, it gives me this huge list. And I've copied that list here, so you don't have to explain this on this little tiny screen, but I can go down on this list by seeing this. And let's talk about what that list is. So bar X, that's just another notation, another way to write average. Well, if I average all those numbers, there it is. I didn't have to type them all out and then add them all up and then divide by how many there were to find it. I can just type it all on that list, hit that one variable stats underneath calc, and it's going to tell me there's your average. Okay, there's the sum of the numbers. Well, I don't really care about that, but remember that's the summation key or Greek letter that we're going to use. And so the sum of them is 2546. Well, I don't care, but that's what that is. The sum squared is, there you go. Okay, well, that's still not important for us today. Oh, wait a minute. What's this stand for? Sigma. This is what we spent a huge amount of time in 61A learning, which was sigma, how to do that by hand, and we did that with just 4 numbers, right? And how cumbersome that was. Here it just found the sigma. The standard deviation of that huge set of numbers is 11.66, and your calculator found it like that. Now, what is N stand for? N is the number. How many are there? 32. This is a good checksum. And when I'm saying checksum, what I'm referring to is if I count out there's 32 numbers and this comes up with the number 31, I know I missed one. I need to go back and look at my list 1. Or if this says 33 and there's only supposed to be 32, I've entered one twice. Once again, the order on the list doesn't make a difference. I didn't even have to put these in order. All I had to do is just put them in list 1. It tells me there's 32 of them. Minimum. Min is for minimum. The smallest number is 55. Well, yeah, if we took the time to build the stem and leaf plot, we would have seen, yep, smallest number is 55, but it's going to tell us. Quartile 1, wait, I don't have to find out what that is? Nope, it tells you 70, median 81.5, Q3 89, max 96, and now I can graph from this information my box and whisker plot right there on my paper without having to do all of the calculations that are very cumbersome in the middle. This is very, very useful. You use that calculator to the fullest. Of course, you're not going to do this on the calculator. You're going to have to write them all out. But if that's what it's asking for is a stem and leaf plot, do the stem and leaf plot. But if the problem in the book says, hey, can you do a box and whisker for me? Sure. Let me just pull out that calculator, go to the stat, hit edit, list one, put them all in there. Once I hit that, I hit the stat button again. One variable stats, hit enter, enter again once it brings up that last screen, and bang, there's your list of information. And from this, I can compose this graph without having to do a whole lot of extra work.